Good afternoon, everybody, and please welcome to our last conversation. If we can advance to the next slide. My name is Maria Restrepo Toro, and I am the co-director of the New England Mental Health TTC. Welcome to our network. And this is our last conversation. That's the listening series that has been developed and put together by the Cultural Responsiveness Working Group. Today, we have a fabulous session and conversation about preventing long-term anger and aggression in youth, well known as PLAAY. And we have a fabulous presenter. Before we start, let's go over some housekeeping items. Next, as you noted, today we're recording this presentation and we'll be put it on our website. All attendees are muted and cannot be sharing the video. So if you do, please have questions. We have the co-chair, the chair of the Cultural Responsiveness Group, Christina Clayton, looking at the Q&A pod and managing all your questions, and we're going to be addressing every single one of them. If you have any audio or tech issue, please use the chat box. You will be receiving an email following this presentation to access a certificate of presentation. Everything is going to be closed captioned today, and please follow up us in social media. We will send the recording within a week of today. In addition to these housekeepings, next, we're going to be using PLAAY Everywhere. If you haven't done so, please take a moment and go to https://pol.com and type in what you see on the screen. Please enter NWMHTTC or text the number 22333, and you will immediately be connected to PLAAY Everywhere, and that is the way how we're going to be interacting with our presenter today. About our network, next slide. If this is your first time, the Mental Health Team Network accelerates the adoption and implementation of mental health-related evidence-based practice across the nation. We are here funded by SAMHSA to develop and disseminate resources to provide free local and regional training and technical assistance, and to really hide the awareness, knowledge, and skills of the mental health work. There are 10 regional centers, a National American Indian and Alaskan Native, and a National Hispanic and Latino Center. And there is a National Coordinated Office, as we refer to the NCO. Next slide, you will see the map. So you will see the 10 regions of the country and the 2 national mental health TTCs. So please visit, if you are new or it's the first time joining us, please visit our network and download any of the resources that you can find. There is an important disclaimer that we would like to go over. At the time of this conversation, as I said, this was prepared by the network under the corporate agreement of SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. All the materials that are appearing in this presentation, except those that have been directly taken by the copyright resources, are reproduced, they are in the public domain and can be reproduced. The presentation will be recorded and posted on our website. And at the time of this presentation, we have Dr. Miriam Delphi Ritmond serve as the SAMHSA Assistant Secretary. Therefore, any opinions that are expressed here are the views of the moderator and not the ones of the official SAMHSA person. Regarding our network, we would like to invite you all. We address to affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented language in all our activities. We really value a strength, hope-based language that is inclusive and is accepting of other cultures, genders, and perspectives and experience, that is really healing and center and trauma responsive. There's no judgmental. We avoid first person and free of labels, and we invite all of you to join us in this practice for today's presentation. And we finally will do an evaluation at the end of our presentation. Because we're funded through SAMHSA, it's so important for us that we submit the data collected through this conversation. So at the end of today, please take a moment, and I promise it's only a very brief, it's only 1 or 2 minutes to respond to this survey. So without further ado, let me just go into what we're here to do today. So as I said, this is the last session the last listening session that we have been doing for the last 6 weeks about cultural responsive evidence-based and community-defined practices for mental health. Today, we're going to be talking about preventing long-term aggression in youth. Next. This series, and just to give you a little bit of background in our conversations, throughout the network, we have this office, which is the Mental Health TTC Cultural Responsiveness Working Group, which the goal is comprised with multiple members throughout the country. And what we are here to do is to disseminate culturally appropriate information and provide technical assistance to the network. We recognize the importance of evidence-based practices in the network. Therefore, we want to be started to explore how to adapt these principles of evidence-based practice and adapt it to diverse and underserved communities. And throughout this work, our group have discovered the importance of also including and promoting culturally inclusive mental health practices that exist in the mental health system. So today, next. When we first started a few weeks ago, we had the goal, and it has been a very fantastic, like today, we want you to, this conversation really engage you in a very interactive conversation with this fabulous speaker that we are going to be presenting today. We really want to invite you to explore the strengths and barriers for community-defined practices and elevate them as culturally, as well as elevating the cultural linguistic appropriate standards that we spoke on the first session of this listening sessions. And we want to really promote and identify ways of increasing the promotion of evidence-based practices and community-defined practices throughout the entire network. As I said earlier, next, we are going to be using our agenda for today. Will be presenting. The presenter will be introducing you how play is an important practice, how play is a cultural responsiveness practice, and to do the conversation, we're going to be use the PLAAY Everywhere. The presenter is going to talk about examples of lessons learned during this time and how to implement those. It's going to talk about fidelity considerations, and a conversation is started. So we're here for a treat. So I invite you again, once again, next slide, to use PLAAY Everywhere. And I want to now welcome Brendan Turner. He is a certified master level play trainer at the CFR program coordinating at the Center for Resilience in Arizona. Brendan is a racial literacy training with the Lion Story, an organization that supports nonprofit, small and large businesses, government and entities, and community organizations across the nation to learn, develop, and use skills to have a productive conversations about race. He began his work in play at the Racial Empowered Collaborative 2017 workshop with Dr. Howard Stevenson at the University of Pennsylvania. Brendan went out to facilitate play groups for children and trained CFR staff for the past 4 years as a senior counselor at CFR. Brendan recognized the children's positive emotional and behavioral responses to play and has been dedicated to spread the effort to create play at CFR in 2019. That is the sister organization of Dr. Stevenson, REC, and the Lion Story. So he is in New Orleans. I'm sorry, I said Arizona. So he's in New Orleans and he's keen to join us. So please welcome Brendan. It's all to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate the introduction and welcome everyone to our session today. I am very grateful and honored to be able to present play and just share some of our experiences with all of you. I think we've got a fairly large village with us today. And that also makes me feel really good because we've got all of these people together taking time out of the day because of the way we care and feel about the children that we serve. So this is a really wonderful opportunity. So play. Play is a culturally responsive group therapy that uses basketball to engage children and teach them the skills to reduce their stress during moments of intense face-to-face conflict, often racialized conflict. At Play at CFR, we saw how the intervention of play worked with our kids and the impact and the response that we had from them. And we made the decision to try to spread that to other youth in the New Orleans region. And that's how Play at CFR came about. A really exciting thing about play is how it uses basketball to engage children. And for now, I just want to say that basketball is basketball just and the court is where it happens. It creates these organic moments of stress that we can then target, and we can draw out the strengths and the challenges of the children within those moments. We can also target those moments of stress on the basketball court, and we can work on the skill building, the reduction of stress, the mindfulness skills, the emotional awareness skills, the advocacy skills, the emotional expressive skills. It's really an incredible office to conduct group therapy. Children respond much better on a court or in another setting where they are comfortable and feel some confidence, as opposed to a closed-in room with four walls, which is uncomfortable for me, and surely for many of the children that we work with. So play is a relationship-based, healing-centered intervention. The development of the relationship between the facilitators and the children is crucial. And one of the advantages of play and how it can be implemented in different areas of the country and different areas of the world throughout different cultures, different groups of children, is that it, well, for one, the facilitators are not required to have a clinical license. You can have a clinical license, and that will give you an additional set of skills, or a different set of skills, I should say. But we find that many of our community members are very skilled at working with our youth and able to connect with our youth. And I'm from California, and I work in New Orleans. So I did not grow up around the population that I serve. And so when you connect the community members who are have the pulse on the populations that they're working on, play is much more effective, being that it's relationship based. So you can see how it might be implemented all over the country with different groups of kids, and the facilitators are really the key to the program. Play has a framework. We'll get into that, racial literacy and the skills and the tools that go along with that. But the relationship is really key, and that can transition, transfer across settings, across different areas. And make it very practical and pretty simple to roll out in different areas of the country. It's possible that this session could get emotional for people. So I urge everyone to protect themselves with the self-care skills that they have. I think we've got a lot of practitioners on here, and probably a lot of strength in the world of self-care, I hope. If we were going through like an actual play workshop, I would be saying this is going to get emotional, and emotions are your superpowers. And when you feel those strong emotions, stay in it. Even if there is stress, stay in that stress and do not run. For this, we're not going to get that deep. Don't worry. We're not going to ask that much of you, as this will be mainly informational and a little bit less interactive. Learning about the intervention is important, and learning about the framework is important. But the most important thing is preparing facilitators to facilitate play. And that involves emotional work, heavy work, emotional labor, and it's hard work. It's also healing, fulfilling. It is a journey. And it's utterly beautiful the togetherness and the support that we're able to create within the workshops when we're facilitating play workshops and teaching people, training people in the intervention. So I want to introduce the innovator of play, Dr. Howard Stevenson. If we could go to the next slide, please. So Dr. Howard Stevenson is a Constance Clayton Professor of Urban Education at the University of Pennsylvania. I'll let you all read the rest of his accomplishments. He's also a clinical psychologist, and he created play back in the late 90s and first studied it in the early 2000s with a population of young Black males. And since then, we've expanded that to children of different races, to children of different genders, and broadened the age range on that as well, and found that when you meet children where they're at, it's an effective intervention across all of those different variables. Dr. Stevenson and Play at CFR have been working together for about 4 years, and we've been training together, and it's a wonderful relationship. And I urge you all to look up the Racial Empowerment Collaborative if you would like to learn a little bit more about his work. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, the dehumanization of the children that we serve. I'm going to read through some of these statistics. Black boys are viewed as older and less innocent than white boys. 5-year-old Black boys trigger thoughts of guns and violence. We can predict Black adult sleep patterns from adolescent experiences of discrimination. The rate of suspension for Black students is 3 times the rate of students of other races. So this is what the children in our communities are dealing with, and this is what they're facing on a daily basis. That data is national data collected by the Racial Empowerment Collaborative. For some local data from New Orleans, in fights involving white and Black students, longer suspensions were given to Black students. The same fight, 2 students, the longer suspension was given to the Black students. In 2017, 937 children between the ages of 10 and 16 were arrested in New Orleans. 303 were detained in the Youth Study Center, which is our juvenile detention center. And of those detained, 96% were African American children. So again, that speaks to the harsher sentencing of African American children when compared to other races. Not only does it reflect, what our kids are dealing with on a daily basis, it also reflects the work that needs to be done by the adults within youth-facing organizations, whether that's the juvenile justice system, schools, mental health systems. I'm going to give everybody just an opportunity to take a few deep breaths. Okay, can we get the next slide, please? Teacher-student relationships make a huge difference in child outcomes. This is a relationship-based program, Play. Not only is the relationships key within facilitators and participants, but when we go into a school and we do a play training with a school, we encourage people to come who might not be facilitating play groups so that they can work on these relationship skills, so that they can work on these racial literacy skills. And I'll explain more about racial literacy within our play workshops. Students who have had negative or poor quality experiences with adults in the past have more difficulty trusting school personnel. So play also helps children to navigate stressful situations with figures of authority, whether they're teachers, police officers, members of their community. And again, within those workshops, we're teaching these skills to the adults in those workshops as well, whether they're administration, faculty, staff. I also am really, I just love to point out this last one. There is no evidence that suspension, expulsion, and other punitive measures deter juvenile delinquency, but there is evidence that these practices and policies lead to an increased risk of juvenile justice involvement. So rejecting the kids and sending them out is not helping them. That is not a preventative measure for their involvement within law enforcement, within the juvenile justice system, or their lack of academic engagement. So PLAAY, we are pitching PLAAY right now, and we'll talk to this a little bit later. We have several models for how to roll out PLAAY in communities, and one of them involves a diversion model where we offer PLAAY as a diversion from juvenile detention. We also would like to offer PLAAY and are working with schools right now where they can target the at-risk children, and we can run PLAAY programs with them and hopefully keep them from getting suspended, keep them from getting expelled, keep them in their home schools. Next slide, please. So now I just want to get into the skill building within PLAAY. And please, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. One of my colleagues here will stop me because I get going and get excited about this stuff, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go. And let me get, and we'll get to the structure of PLAAY in a minute, but just so that everybody is on the same page. So within a PLAAY group, you'll spend 20 minutes working on group content. That'll be the group therapy portion. And then you'll spend about 40 minutes or so outside, playing basketball, playing another sport, playing another game, whatever it is that we're using for the game portion of it. So within the group content, we work on these skills. And one of the skills is calculate, locate, communicate, breathe, and exhale. And this is a stress reduction skill, a mindfulness skill that improves self-regulation with the kids. Many times when kids are faced with a racially stressful event, many adults have the same reaction. We go into fight or flight, children go into fight or flight. We overreact or we underreact. For the kids, the kids that we work with at Center for Resilience, an underreaction looks like quitting. It looks like walking away. So if a child is faced with a racially stressful event in the community and they walk away from that event, they avert their eyes, their gaze. They are physically differential. They are internalizing the stress and the trauma of that event by walking away. They don't have a choice of how to handle that. They have gone into flight. That looks like avoidance. They're going to walk away from that event. They're going to internalize that stress and trauma, very possibly internalize racism, and that is going to have a long-term negative effect on their physical and emotional health. The overreaction, which would be the fight, looks a lot like physical and verbal aggression. And there are a whole set of consequences that go along with that. What can happen to a child in 60 to 90 seconds in one of these highly charged, racially stressful events? Their life can change. Their family's life can change. Other families' lives can change. Other children's lives can change dramatically within 60 to 90 seconds because they did not have another choice other than that physical aggression. They went into fight. That was their choice. Not a choice. That was what they were faced with. They did not have a choice at that point. So the point of CLCBE is to reduce your stress, get your mind, get your body out of that fight or flight response, initiate your executive functioning, and give these children choices. And the choice might be to say something back to defend themselves. The choice might be to walk away. The choice might be to go and tell someone who is close to them what happened and process the event with them. The point is that CLCBE offers children the chances to have the choice. If a child decides that they're in a racially stressful event, it is not a safe event and that they're going to walk away from that event, what they internalize after making that choice is much different than if they were forced to make that choice. They have the options to walk away from that event. They have the options then to process that event with someone in their village, someone who they trust, someone who they can work through that stress and trauma with. The work we do in the community and families as well is trying to prepare everybody around this child. Who is this child's village? Let us connect this child with their village so that they have people who are speaking the same language, who are working on the same skills to support them.
Brendan, we have a question.
Yes, wonderful.
Is now a good time to ask that?
Sure.
Okay, great. Samantha asked, can you speak to how play is complementary to trauma-informed approaches and policies that seem to be pervasive in New Orleans schools right now?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So let's see here, trauma-informed policies. So play is a strength-based, healing-centered intervention. We are going to target the strengths, celebrate the strengths, celebrate the individual styles that these children are bringing. Through that celebration, we're going to build up a lot of skills, and through those skills, they're going to internalize different things like confidence, resilience, self-advocacy, positive sense of racial identity, self-esteem, self-worth, so that when they're able to start to work on their narrative, start to work on their story. And we know in trauma-informed care, a lot of it is about going back and telling stories, right? We want to go back and talk about certain events and process those events, whether that's verbally, through art, through music, however it is, wherever that child works best. Play builds a lot of those skills to get to that point where they can start to process through that stress and trauma. That's one piece. The other piece is that the ability to reduce your stress in a highly charged, stressful event can be preventative when it comes to the internalization or the experience of traumatic events, right? A lot of traumatic events can be avoided if this child builds these skills and can start to make choices to protect themselves and shield themselves from particular traumatic events. It also, we really promote storytelling, and we'll get into that skill as well, but there's a lot of practice when it comes to storytelling. And storytelling acts as a really impactful tool when it comes to processing trauma. Okay, I hope that answered your question well. Can we move on to the next slide? Also, if I have not answered a question well, and there's questions on top of the question, feel free to put that into the chat, and I'm going to share our website with y'all at the end of this, and my email address is on that. And I would love to hear from anybody and have further conversations about play. So our racial literacy skills, read, recast, resolve. So we want to teach kids the skills to read the situation that they're in. Is this a racially stressful event? Am I being disrespected right now because of my race or my gender or my sexual orientation, religion, ability, immigration status, all of these different identities? Let me read myself. Where am I at emotionally? Where is the other person at emotionally? Am I safe right now? Is this person about to pop? Let me read this situation. When I use CLCBE, I can reduce my stress. I can read this situation. Recast. Let me reframe this situation. Let me recast it. You're coming at me with some sort of a microaggression. You don't know me. Your problem with you is actually, or your Freudian slip, your problem with me is actually your problem with you. I know who I am. I'm good with who I am. So this problem that you're coming at me with, this distorted narrative that you're coming at me with, this is your problem, sir. So that's like just an example of how to like reframe, recast a situation. This is not about me. This is about you. I'm not gonna take in this negativity. I'm gonna bounce it back to you. And then to resolve it. How do I resolve this racially stressful event to a healthy and safe outcome for myself? Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe as well, emotionally healthy for myself as well. And so the tools that we use to help kids to learn this is storytelling, journaling, debate, and role play, as well as CLCBE, our mindfulness tool. So storytelling, processing, helps us to process events, builds confidence, helps us to read the events. We find a witness. We find who our village is. That is part of the things that we work on with play. Who is our village? Who can I go to tell my story? We tell stories in our groups over and over and over again, every single week. You know, who has a story to tell about a stressful event that happened at school during the last week? We're going to just practice it over and over again. Self-advocacy skills, journaling. With journaling, oftentimes that helps us to read situations, right? And a lot of times we're reflecting on a situation that has already happened, and all of a sudden we're reading that situation in a different light. Different things are popping out to us through journaling, and that can lead to different solutions that we might then be able to practice so that we're ready for the next racially stressful event that we might encounter, right? And this is the preparation that we're working on with the children. We know that we're not going to solve systemic racism anytime soon. So we do need to prepare the children to be able to deal with the inevitable event that they will have to deal with someday. And there is data about racial socialization and how that has better prepared children to deal with these events, leading to healthier and safer outcomes. And some of that data can be found if you Google Racial Empowerment Collaborative and some of the articles that Dr. Stevenson has written. And I can provide you more information on that as well if you email me. Okay, so debate. Debate is teaching self-control, organization, comeback lines. How do I defeat your argument with my argument? How do I back it up? How am I convincing? How can I control my emotions in this charged situation so that I can say what I want to say? I don't want to walk away from this situation thinking, man, I should have said this. I should have said that. I want to say it. I want to count on my intuition to say it when I'm in the moment. And then role playing, which really helps us to recast and resolve, because we'll role play event the way it happened. And then we might role play an event with no rules. You can do and say whatever you want. And then we might role play that event with some sort of a healthy comeback line that leads to a healthy and safe outcome. So again, this is all practice, practice, practice. We are practicing for these events. Next slide, please. So we're going to cut into Dr. Stevenson's research. This was from a study in the early 2000s from a discipline school with about 102 boys. And the group that was randomly assigned to the play program exhibited increased attendance, increased homework completion, increased school engagement, reduced in-school assault rate, and reduced referrals to the office. I just got this message from Gabrielle. You know what? Let's go to that video because I've got a quick story. Let's go to that video, but I'm going to let you know when to press play. Okay? Is that okay? All right. I think it's okay. So while she's getting the video ready, I want to talk about a child who, when they first started in play, this child started in play and he came out to the basketball court and he sat on the ball. And he just sat on the ball. For 3 weeks, he sat on the ball. He was afraid to shoot. He was afraid to fail. He could not advocate for himself when he tried. If he were to go out there and shoot the ball and miss, he was going to be triggered. He was going to escalate close to outbursts, sometimes to outbursts, walk off the court, sometimes threatening other children. Sometimes it did not lead to any physical aggression, but there was opportunities for it too. He was ready to if somebody had said something. So this child was just petrified to fail in front of his peers. A few months after play, after he had been in play, he was able to get out on the basketball court. He was able to advocate for himself. He was able to help pick teams. He was able to help call fouls. He was able to argue the fouls. He was able to be involved in the game without the help of an adult. He was able to shoot, miss, have a terrible game, and still give the other team a little dap at the end of the game. He was engaged in the game. He realized, man, this is really fun to play a 30-minute basketball game without quitting, without fighting. Let's play the video real quick. Oh, get him, John, illegal head start. Did you all see what happened at the very end with the little kid who came in at the bottom of the screen? He shot a little runner from about 20 feet on a tiny, tiny basketball rim and just nailed it. That was that child who sat on the ball maybe 6 months earlier, sat on the ball and refused to play. He's playing, he's running around, he's having fun, he's engaged, he's using social skills with his peers. It was really beautiful to watch his transformation. There was another little boy who every time anything went wrong, whether he bumped into another player, and he loved to play football, so most of this was on the football field. He quit or he tried to fight, and everybody kind of knew, whoa, stay away from him. He's triggered right now. I would go through CLCBE with him, and let me give you a quick example of CLCBE while I talk about this child. I would go through CLCBE with him, and I would start out with calculate. I can see you're upset. Can I ask you some questions? Yes? Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how high, how big is that feeling? 10's a mountain, 1's a molehill. He'd say, it's a 10. Okay. What is the feeling? I'm mad. Okay. L, locate. Where on your body do you have that feeling? I feel it in my fists. Okay. What are the thoughts that are going through your head right now? I want to hit somebody. Sometimes you'd say, I want to hit you, Mr. Turner. Okay. Let's take a big deep breath in through our nose slowly and exhale slowly through our mouth. All right. Ready to get back in there and play. So it's just a simple little ask. And you can see, you know, what it's about. It's about emotional awareness. It's about awareness of self. It's about recognition of like, what are the thoughts going through my head? When I'm mad at a 10, I want to hit somebody, and my doorbell is my fists, right? So he's learning all these things. He's internalizing things, and we're practicing this 2-3 times a day. We go through this because this child was triggered all throughout the group. About 3 months into the group, we would go through CLCBE, and everything was the same. What is the level of the feeling? It's a 10. I'm mad. It's in my fists. What are the thoughts? I don't want to hit somebody. Something had changed in there throughout those few months where he was starting to be able to play the tape forward. I don't want to hit somebody. I still feel it. I know how big the feeling is. The feeling is just as big, but now all of a sudden, I have a different set of thoughts that go with it. I feel angry. I know I'm angry. I can feel it in my fists. I really don't want to hit somebody. I want to play some football. All right, let's breathe and exhale and get back in there. Okay, we can go back to the slides. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. We'll take another look at that little kid in a minute too. And we'll see where his focus turned, how his focus turned from, you know, whether he failed, whether somebody else had done it wrong. Let's go to the next slide, please. Whether or not there was some sort of conflict or argument, whether or not someone had passed him the ball enough. That was a big thing from him. Nobody's passing me the ball. Get very upset about that, which I get it. That is upsetting. But how does he deal with it? And we'll see a quick little video of him in a minute. Okay, so play, again, I've said this a few times, strength-based, healing-centered. This is really important. Let us meet you where you're comfortable. That is one of the keys to play. When it comes to fidelity, let us meet the children where they're comfortable. Can we create a setting where that child is comfortable, where they can thrive, where they're so engaged in the activity that they can't control their stress. They can't control their joy. Their joy is huge. Their anger is huge. Their buy-in is huge. You know, in a room with 4 walls and you're trying to do some sort of group therapy or psychotherapy with a child, you know, a lot of times they're not going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to open up to you and be vulnerable in this weird room. But on a basketball court, on a football field, yes, They're ready to go. They're not going to control that stress. It just comes out, and you know, their minds are going, their bodies are going. It's just a wonderful setting to be able to conduct therapy. And the most important thing is meeting that child where they're comfortable. We can talk a little bit more about like the different ways that we've implemented play, because we have expanded it to girls, because we've talked a lot about boys, but we've expanded it to girls and we've expanded it to other activities. It just needs to be a competitive activity that has winning, losing, success, failure, competition, conflict, rules, all these different things that create organic moments of stress. We've been doing video games because of the virtual world that we've had to live in with the pandemic. We've created a whole play curriculum that's virtual, and we use video games to create these moments of stress. And video games are a place where children are very comfortable and very confident, and they want to be there. They're engaged in that. The focus of the content is on strengths within family, self, and community. We really want to build that child's positive sense of racial identity. We want to celebrate their style. We want to celebrate where they've come from. What is it? Is it music? Is it rap? Is it poetry? Is it dance? Is it movement? What is your style? Let's celebrate that. Is it your ability to talk trash on the basketball court? And a lot of people are, why would you want them to talk trash on the basketball court? Two things. One, trash talking means they're engaged. They are bought in, and they're using their mental powers coming from who they are, their own style, to overcome their opponent. Now, trash talking can go too far and can get personal. That's another skill that we build. You can talk trash about what's going on the basketball court. You can talk trash about your skills. But as soon as you start talking about somebody's mom, that's personal. Now we got to fight. And guess what? The game is over. And that person who you've been respecting, your opponent, who's a part of this game, you guys are both a part of this game together, enjoying it, that is now over. The game is over. There's a fight. And so kids learn where that line is, which is very nuanced. You know, I can talk trash within this setting, but I don't want to make it personal. And that's a wonderful skill for kids to have. What does it, all of this translate into what these children carry away from this? Confidence, resilience, self-advocacy, emotional awareness of self and others, self-regulation, problem-solving skills, commitment to what they're doing. I want to do this. I want to do this. And being a part of, I'm a part of something, and also joy. Okay, we have some more questions.
Yes. So Dana asks, I'm going to try and summarize, many of these aspects remind her of a similar program, and that while folks were enrolled in the program, they had a lower rate of interaction with juvenile justice. However, 3 years later, not a big difference, because they are hypothesizing it was due to the fact that they were no longer getting those weekly reminders. So the question is, you know, she's curious how play is considering sustainability for these stress reduction and relationship skills after participants age out of the program.
That's a very good question. I think that one of the things that we're working on is to create a set of measures and to track data of kids as they transition out, as they transition to other places. Again, I think the relationship piece is big. So if a child can build a relationship with a coach, if a child can build a relationship with a teacher and stay connected with that person, whether or not they're still going to school, whether or not they're still playing on that person's team, if they can develop those relationships, I think that the research shows us that those relationships lead to engaged academic, and academic engagement. And academic engagement often leads to lower interactions with law enforcement. It's a really good question, and it's a tough question. I would say that the other advantage to play is, again, that you do not need a clinical license to become a facilitator. And so you can create a sustainable play program within your community that can be at the, I mean, it depends on the size of your community. It depends on a lot of different things, but you can have, there are opportunities to create a comprehensive play program within your community that is in the elementary school level, in the middle school level, in the high school level. The other thing that's a really interesting thing, and this is a wonderful program, and you all can Google this as well, in Binghamton, New York, the football coach in Binghamton, New York, was having a lot of problems with his team, and there was a lot of fights, and a lot of it was racialized. And so he went and he got trained with Dr. Stevenson to become a play facilitator, brought that back, went through the play program with his high schoolers, and had really good results. Then they turned around and the high schoolers became like play facilitator mentors, and they started facilitating groups with the middle school kids. And then the superintendent of the district, they took some data, and the data came back fairly well, and they decided to make that program district wide. So it's basically like it's play, but it's play with a mentorship program. So it makes me think of how do we continue to keep kids engaged, and that is one opportunity to keep them engaged is having them work towards some sort of a mentorship program where they can then pass on the lessons that they learn to younger kids. And the other beautiful thing to me about that is that those younger kids, I mean, they're going to pay attention to those high schoolers way more than they're going to pay attention to myself or other adults. They're going to be much more engaged and enthralled with the high school mentors. So that's a really good question, and that's a tough question. And I wish I had more answers for that question.
No, it's true. It's always a dilemma with programs like this, is when that ends, what can be sustained. So that sounds like some good ideas. We have a couple other questions. This relates to what you mentioned about who can do play. So the question is, do recreation therapists do a lot of the facilitation, or is it geared more towards social workers to facilitate?
It depends on what works best for your program and for the organization that you work for. If you were to, the beautiful thing about play is it's pretty low cost once you're trained, right? And so let's say you want to go into a school and run play groups in a school. So the school might, send people to a workshop, and we would suggest, like, yeah, sure, send your social workers, send your school counselors. That would definitely be helpful. How will they be able to facilitate play would be up to the program, and can you like free them up to be able to be in different places at different times to facilitate play. I mean, honestly, an easier solution is like, let's train our PE coaches, let's train our after school programming staff, because you've already got PE scheduled as a block. You've already got a facilitator, you've got the coach, the PE teacher, you've got the paraprofessional. They're ready to go. You get those people trained, and sports teams, coaches as well, football, baseball, volleyball, whatever it is, softball. You get them trained, and they can go in, they can do a 20-minute group therapy session based on the content within the play intervention. And then they can transition out to their regular activities, whatever it is in PE, whatever it is in that after school program, if it's, sports based or even just competition based. Whatever it is, if you got softball practice or football practice, you can transition into that next activity. And then you work on all those skills that you talked about in that room. You go out and you work on them in vivo, in real life situations, and you target those stressful situations when two kids are ready to go at each other over some sort of perceived conflict, or a child's about ready to quit because they feel like they have failed. So that's like just for schools. For like an organization like ourselves, we work with kids who have not been able to be supported in their home schools, and so they're referred to us. And so we're a therapeutic day treatment center. So we have something like a therapeutic activities block, right? And so within the therapeutic activities block, we have what we call milieu specialists. And they're like the on the ground, boots on the ground people for us. They spend most of the day with the children. They do most of the work with the children, and they're responsible for a lot of the successes of our children here. And so they have a therapeutic activities block where they might go see an art therapist or a music therapist, or they have the option to be a part of the play program. Our milieu specialists have been trained to facilitate play. And so during that block, our milieu specialists would do, 20 minutes of group therapy and then take them outside and play basketball or football. Or if the weather's bad, maybe they'll get everybody on a video game, playing in a video game together. Like Among Us or Drawasaurus or Madden or whatever it is. And then they'd be able to practice those skills within that comfortable setting for that child. And for myself, when I was running play groups here, I did it during group therapy. So if you're a social worker at a school and you have a group therapy period, you do the group therapy for 20 minutes, and then maybe you can have access to the gym and take your group to the gym and play a basketball game to work on those skills. We're partnering up with a boxing gym, a local boxing gym, and the owner of the gym is offering the gym and memberships and boxing training free to anybody who we bring to them. And so he's also going to come over and get trained and play. And so we're going to partner with him in facilitating the 20-minute therapy session. And then the kids are going to transition to him and just train doing their boxing skills. And he's going to be able to use his knowledge of play and the skill building to target those same moments of stress. So across a lot of different settings, you do whatever works best for your organization. No clinical license required.
Great. All right, couple more questions. How do you make sure that you are developing social interaction skills during a game? And is not just a game without any issues happening during the game, but what if there are behavioral issues happening outside the game environment? So
Sure. So the game is where we practice our skills, right? We practice our stress reduction. We practice our self-advocacy, problem solving, social skills. So when we have a group of kids start with us and we bring them out to play, the adults try to step back as much as possible. We support only when necessary when it comes to the games. We might go through some of the CLCBE with them during the game, but in terms of the organization of the game, who are the captains? Who gets to pick the teams? Which team gets the ball first? What are the rules? How many steps is traveling? When you're talking about 7 and 8-year-olds, 4 or 5 steps is not a traveling. 5 or 6 steps, that's a traveling. They've got to figure those things out amongst themselves. How do you dispute a foul called, right? What happens if there's too rough of a foul? What happens when one team wins and one team loses? So when kids first start with us with play, we can't get the game going sometimes. It just evolves. Kids are quitting. Kids are becoming verbally aggressive, which we have to intervene to make sure it doesn't become physically aggressive. Or sometimes there is a fight on the court. That's in the beginning. By the end of the program, we toss the ball to them, and they're picking teams. We got to shoot for it for captain. We got to shoot for it. You can't just call yourself first captain. We got to shoot for it. You got to shoot for ball. That's a traveling. Oh, I don't think that's a traveling. Okay, well, how are we going to decide this? We're going to Rochambeau to see if it was a traveling or not. They come up with these different problem-solving skills, and they build those skills. They build the self-advocacy skills. They build those socialization, those social skills through the storytelling is a big piece of the skill building. CLCBE gives them the opportunity to work on the skill building because they're staying in that stressful event. They're staying in the stress with CLCBE to get to the point of being able to do storytelling. Debating is a big skill builder. Role playing is a big skill builder. So all of these different tools that we use lead to those development of social skills. And when you see the same group of kids, 3 months later, play a whole game by themselves, succeed, fail, argue, conflict, all of these things that happen, and then they give each other a little dap at the end of the game. Good game. It's a really wonderful thing. It's hard work, and the hardest work is done by the kids, but it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Great. We have one more question waiting in the queue, but please feel free to put in more. So question is, I love that this has been adapted to cover other genders, ages, and activities other than basketball. But since you mentioned the activity has to be competitive, do you find any exception to the positive outcomes for kids whose personalities are lower in competitiveness or maybe less social or outgoing by nature? So I think the question is, you know, can these kinds of skills be applied maybe to something that's less competitive, or what about kids that aren't really into group activities?
Again, I would say the answer would be the key is the relationship that you're building with that child, right? And trying to discover, where does this child thrive? Where is this child's comfort zone? We haven't really, we've had some children opt out of the group. And I mean, play is not going to be for every single child. There are some children who are like, hey, I'd like to just sit in the room and do a more traditional type of group therapy. And then, you know, going through those social skill, the skill building, the social skills, the problem solving skills within a more traditional group therapy format. And we do offer options for the kids. You know, do you want to do play, or would you like to do a more traditional group therapy intervention? And so, I mean, it's not going to be for everybody. I would say for the kids that are, like, let's say, less social. I mean, we've had kids that are afraid of social interactions, but they do like to play video games, and they have kind of blossomed within that setting. I had a child who he was crawling with discomfort when it came to social interactions. When the pandemic hit and we closed down and we started doing virtual programming, we started doing Zoom calls with video games, and we were playing Roblox. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Roblox, but we were playing Roblox on our phone together, and we would get in the same game together, me and this child, and we would play. And this was actually in individual therapy, but we played Roblox within group therapy as well. And this child just started talking because I didn't know how to play, and they were teaching me how to play. So we're in a setting that was comfortable for them, a setting that was engaging for them. And all of a sudden there was this confidence, this appreciation of, let me teach this guy. There's a lot of self-regulation practice as well, because this child was very impatient with my inability to learn how to play Roblox, you know, because I struggled. And this kid was great at it. And they're teaching me, and they're having to slow down, you know, their own progress in the game to come back and get me and bring me along some certain little obstacle course that I had to get through. But the child started talking, and the child was comfortable in that setting and thrived in that setting. And we really developed a relationship within that virtual setting that was much stronger than the relationship we had developed in person. So it's not going to be for everybody. But if you can find a place where that child is really comfortable, that's the setting that we want to target, and we want to try to create for that child to thrive. Okay, let's do next slide if we don't have any more questions. And feel free to let me know how I'm doing on time if I need to speed things up. There's a little black box. Can't quite see what the top. Okay, there we go. Internalized skills across settings. So this is some of the stuff that we've been talking about. So this is some of the data that Dr. Stevenson has collected, and this data is based on, I mean, he's been working on this since the early 90s. So this data on play and on racial literacy, Dr. Stevenson has been working on and collecting for 31 years. So internalized settings, skills across settings, reduce stress and increase capacity to challenge racial and gender stereotypes. That could be anywhere. That could be in school, that could be in community, that could be in the home, in the family home. Develop interpersonal and school achievement skills. That's a really powerful one. The same child who was sitting on the ball did not have the ability to go into a math class and deal with a difficult problem. That problem, if you put that problem in front of that child, they're going to rip up that piece of paper. They're going to throw the shredded paper across the room. And they might have started turning over chairs in the room because they were overwhelmed with the stress of dealing with that math problem. After 3 months of play, that same child could go into the classroom, and at the very least, that child had the confidence and the self-advocacy skills to say to the teacher, I can't do this right now. This is too much. I need to do something different. Take this math problem away from me. So they might have not gotten to the point where they could do the math problem, but they got to the point where they could resolve that event in a healthy and appropriate way. And then over time, again, that same child develops the skills to say, hey, can you help me with this problem? I want to do this problem. So that's how we have seen at CFR some of the skills transition across settings. Strengthen individual and family stress management and racial assertiveness. I'm not going to be disrespected this way. I know my own story. I know my narrative. I'm not accepting this false, distorted narrative that you're trying to put on me. No, thank you. Build positive self-identity and reduce interpersonal conflict and stress. That's a huge one. Build racial coping efficacy and racial assertiveness. And then this is something, all of that really came from the Racial Empowerment Collaborative. This one piece came from CFR as well. Process and resolve long-term racial stress and trauma, increasing positive physical and emotional health outcomes. The children that we serve here at Center for Resilience, the vast majority of them have extensive trauma histories. And so a lot of these children are dealing with a lot. A lot of these children come to us very hypervigilant, and it's difficult to recognize their triggers. Through play, you start recognizing, they start recognizing what is triggering for them, and they start putting a voice to it. And they start being able to put a voice to it, and they start telling us what they need, because they are their own best expert. We don't have the answers for this child. This child has the answers. They are their own best expert. We're just there to support their process of discovering the strengths that they have inherent. Next slide, please. All right, we've got a poll question. So we've got 3 9s, a couple of 10s, a couple of 6s, a 1, an 8. So folks are feeling good about their ability to engage in a difficult conversation about race. And see, the reason why we put this question in is because this is what we're asking the children to build on. These are the skills we're asking the children to develop. So if we as practitioners, if we as teachers, if we as youth-facing staff members and professionals, we've got to have these skills ourselves, right? Because if a child comes to us with a difficult conversation about race and we're frozen, we go into fight or flight, we're not validating that child's lived experience. And we're sending a message to them that their lived experience is not valuable. It's not worth a conversation. And that can obviously be very damaging to a child. And it's a missed opportunity to engage in relationship building. I've worked with some people at my other job that were really concerned about, a child coming to them and being called a racist. And, people wanted to know, how can I respond to that? And we were really, going from the angle of, well, let's reduce your stress and read the situation. This child is reaching out to you for help. This child is bringing something to you based on their lived experience. And how can you validate that? How can you engage in a conversation? Oh, I've done something that is racist. You think that I am racist. Let's have a conversation about that. I care about you, and I want to have a conversation about that. I want to hear more about that. That's a beautiful opportunity to build a relationship between a teacher or a youth-facing professional and that child. But if that person goes into fight or flight and all they can think of is, well, how can I get this child to believe I'm not a racist? Well, that's not validating this child's experience. And you're missing the opportunity. And you're missing, if this child comes to you and says this, they're probably going to tell you what you did that they felt was racist. And that's a beautiful opportunity for personal growth. And if we're looking out for what's best for the children, we really want to build those skills so that we can validate the children, so that we can protect the children, so that we can show affection for the children, and we can connect with them. So a part of the relationship framework, I'm just going to talk a little bit while this poll goes on. A part of the relationship framework that goes along with play is protection, affection, connection, correction. And these are some of the things that we want to build. And this is a culturally responsive piece to the relationship framework. How does this child operate? How do I show affection for this child in a way that's appropriate, in a way that they're going to respond positively to? How do I show affection for this child in a way that does not make them uncomfortable? How can I meet them where they're at? I need to figure that out. I need to know that to be competent as a professional. How can I protect this child? What kind of things do I need to do to protect this child emotionally, physically, mentally? And then how do I connect with this child? How can I meet this child where they're at? How can I create a setting where they're comfortable so that I can meet with them where they're at and connect with them? And if I don't establish those three things, protection, affection, correction, protection, affection, connection, it's going to be very hard for me to provide correction. Because at some point, as we're working with kids, we're going to need to provide some correction. But if we don't have that relationship built through protection, affection, connection, any kind of correction that we try to provide is likely going to fall on deaf ears and could even be insulting, offensive, inappropriate if we don't have that relationship built with that child already, damaging. Dr. Stevenson and the Racial Empowerment Collaborative have developed a coding for protection, affection, correction, connection. So when we go through workshops, we can actually watch videos and have people analyze the videos and talk about when they see protection, affection, correction, connection within the videos. And basically we can score facilitators, we can score trainers on their competency in that relationship framework. Okay, so it looks like we've got a lot of 7, 8, 9, 10s and some 2s and 3s and 4s and 6s. And another thing that we really stress within the workshops when we're working with professionals is this is about competence, not character. If you're within these rooms and we're telling these stories about racial stress and racially stressful events that we've been involved in, which is some of the work, right? Sometimes people are going to make a mistake. Sometimes people are going to say something that's going to be hurtful to somebody else. That's an opportunity to build on. That's an opportunity for correction. That's an opportunity for protection as well. We need to protect other people in the room sometimes. But the point is, it is about competence and it is about skill building. We are trying to teach children the skills to engage in difficult conversations. And in order to do that, we've got to teach the adults those same skills. And when you have those skills, you can make a mistake and then you can have a conversation about that mistake and see how you can further, develop your competency in that field of racial literacy. in that field of social justice. But if we're unwilling to engage in the conversation because we avoid, and a lot of times avoidance as adults looks like self-defense, right? I've got this self-righteous defense mechanism that just pops up, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to block whatever's coming at me. That is shutting down a conversation that could have been very productive and healing. And that's very problematic. And adults get aggressive as well. Trying to intimidate people out of a conversation. Okay, let's if we're ready, let's move on. Okay, so we've talked a bit about narratives. Dr. Stevenson said, I don't want to steal this from him. Give him his credit where credit is due. Dr. Stevenson said that he really feels like his job is to help children to learn, to discover, to fall in love with their own narrative. Not the distorted, damaging, negative, inaccurate narrative that others have put on children. Particularly Black children, particularly children in marginalized communities. We're going to reject that narrative, and I'm building my own narrative, and I'm falling in love with my own narrative. And as I fall in love with my own narrative, as I build my racial coping, self-efficacy, my positive sense of identity, my confidence, I can really start to blossom. I can build those skills of perseverance. I can build those skills that we talked about in the earlier slides when it comes to just buy-in, commitment, joy, problem solving, social skills. When a child is in love with who they are, where they have come from, what they love, their narrative, their style, their way of movement, their way of speaking, their music, their dance. It's really wonderful to watch them just come out of their shell, and you realize, look at this incredible child and all that they have to offer. So sitting on a ball to the touchdown dance. We talked about this kiddo already. Let's go to the video, and I think it's going to take a sec to get to this video so I can continue to talk, though y'all are probably tired of listening to me at this point. Okay, so this is a right after a touchdown, and we got a little kiddo who sat on the ball, and we got another little kiddo in here who was triggered all the time and feels his anger in his fists, and wants to hit somebody, and then got to a point where he doesn't want to hit somebody. And these kids have got some skills, and then we have a third child in here who's not a dancer. So let's hit play. Touchdown dance. Just scored.
Yeah. Don't put on my face. No.
It's a wonderful little sneak peek at a child who's no longer afraid to try. It's a wonderful little sneak peek at a child who has enjoyed being engaged in a game of football with opponents and has used all of his skills to stay engaged in that game for 30 to 45 minutes. Whereas previously neither one of these children was making it through a game for more than 5 or 10 minutes. They're getting to experience the joy of childhood and the joy of growing into who they are. Okay, let's get back to this slides, please. I think I think the next slide is about the structure of a play group, the nuts and bolts So I'm just going to go through it real quick. And if we have questions that come up about this, let's put them in the chat, please. 20 sessions over 10 weeks, 2 additional weeks for pre and post data collection. And I actually left out pre, mid, and post data collection. We do want to evaluate this and see how it's working for different people and across different settings. 2 to 4 sessions include parents. That's a key. We really want to have some continuity in the home as well. So if this child is learning this in school, for the parent to just be aware and be in touch with what their child is doing is super important. And for the parent to learn about the skills that we're teaching them so that they can support that skill building at home is very important. And parents oftentimes have their own narrative to tell as well, and oftentimes are not given the settings or the platform for them to be able to do that, a lot of times within schools and other systems. So if we can give them a platform to share their experience and their story, man, that can be so powerful. 60 to 90-minute sessions, 20 minutes of culturally responsive group therapy, 40 minutes of basketball, 12 to 15 children. It really depends. We've never had 12 to 15 children on our side at Center for Resilience. We've had about maybe 8 to 10 children at most in a play group. But the kids that we work with have fairly significant behavioral and emotional challenges. So kids that are still at their home school, whether they're working in the SPED department or if they're in the general education population, can oftentimes, you have enough kids to be able to form a group of 10 to 15 children. 2 facilitators. We always suggest having 2 trained facilitators for every group because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on when you get a group of kids together this size. And the facilitator's job is really to notice what's going on so that they can provide protection, affection, connection, correction, and support with CLCVE when necessary. Okay, so the requirements of what you need a group room, you need some journals and pins for the kids, you need a basketball court, or you need access to video games, or you need a football field, or you need Connect 4. We had a child who loved Connect 4. And so that's what we played. We played Connect 4 with her, and she got very stressed out, and we were able to work on those skills. We added a timer to the Connect 4. So each of your turns was on a timer. That increased the stress level, which was good. The manual, the play manual, the pre and post measures. And then for parents, our parents are dealing with so much, and they're so busy, and they're always just trying to do whatever they can to support their families, and oftentimes have a tremendous amount of stress on them. And are really just struggling to get by and provide their children with what their kids need. So the more we can do for our parents to make it easy for them, because that's a big inconvenience to come down. All right, well, come on down on a Tuesday night and spend 2 hours with us. Never mind, your other kids, never mind bedtimes, never mind homework, school prep, all these different things that a parent has to take care of. I got 3 kids. I know how it is. So the more that we can provide things with them. So for like us, we're writing this stuff into the grants that we're writing for. We want to be able to pay for parents if they need transportation. We want to pay for transportation. We want to pay for several people to be down here to care for other children that the parents might need to bring with them. And in the parent sessions, they're going to watch their children play in that basketball game or play in that video game, watch us work with their kids on the stress reducing skills. And then the parents are going to have a separate session apart from the kids where we'll just talk about the skills. And if parents want to engage in some of the practice, then they're welcome to engage in the practice as well. Storytelling is generally the one. And we find that, when possible, if you can have a meal, if you can actually, cater a meal or, cook a meal yourself and serve it to 20 parents or 10 parents or 5 parents, however many you're able to engage, that's a beautiful community building exercise, sharing a meal together. COVID complicates everything. So I'm not suggesting that anybody do anything dangerous during these times, but under normal conditions, a community meal is really beautiful.
Hey, Brendan.
Yes.
Sorry, just one last question. I know we have just about 10 minutes left. We need a few minutes to kind of exit the webinar with a few slides with us, but a good question. And again, to the attendees, we will be doing an FAQ and resource document after this session. So we'll note all the questions you've asked and different key pieces of information, how to get in touch and learn more. But one question is, can you talk more specifically about the cost, time, or other requirements for people who want to get this training? What does that look like, and what does it cost to learn the PLAAY model?
Sure. So we kind of have a sliding scale on the workshop depending on like the number of people who an organization sends to us. But it can be anywhere pretty much from a $750 a workshop to $550 a workshop, depending on that sliding scale and who you send to us. We can provide virtual workshops. We have a workshop coming up in the fall, and that's going to be a virtual workshop for sure. So we have found that it's still very effective being able to do this over Zoom. But that's pretty much the sliding scale. But there's always exceptions as well. Especially when, you know, if different grants and different funding comes in, that can always give us some abilities to make exceptions, you know, depending on the financial capacities of the organizations that we're working with. So we try to make it as cost inclusive as possible.
And how long is the training? Is it 1 day, 2 days, 5 days?
So the way we're structuring the virtual workshops is generally it's going to be a 4-hour workshop over 4 days. And we don't like to do more than 4 hours a day in the virtual space, because we just find over Zoom that people they're checked out after 4 hours. In-person workshops, we can do like, you know, 6-hour sessions or 8-hour sessions, but over Zoom, we prefer 4-hour sessions over 4 days. And again, depending on, you know, what the need is, we can always try to schedule those or at times that are that work for the organizations that we're working with.
Great, thank you.
So
I'll let you wrap
16
up.
hours of training though.
Okay, thank you.
We can also provide support afterwards, and if people want, you know, if they want to build the most sustainable program, we do offer a train the trainer track as well. And if you want to just dip your toes in before you go for something like that, if you go through our PLAAY workshop and then you decide, I do want to go through train the trainer, I'd like to have a trainer at our facility that can train other facilitators, and that way our program is just sustainable. We don't have to worry about losing staff or anything like that. You can always apply those hours from the workshop to the train the trainer hours.
All right, well, I think we can wrap up with any of your slides, and then Maria will take over.
I think we just have one more or a couple more slides. I'll go over this really quick because I know we're short on time. This is just one of our community models, and it involves a triage, which could be, that could be the schools. They know what kids are at risk. It could be the juvenile courts, the judges, and the DA. It could be the juvenile detention centers running a program, let's say, for kids that are either in there or kids who are going to be released soon. That would serve as a triage. You want to build a group of community-based organizations. Like for a pilot model, you probably just get 3 or 4 maybe, and then PLAAY at CFR would come in and train them and provide ongoing supervision and consultation for those community-based organizations. So whoever is triaging the children can then decide, you know, is it a good fit to send this child to one of these community-based organizations? Maybe one organization does basketball, one organization does video games, one organization does boxing, and they all do the PLAAY intervention content. And then we can also provide program evaluation so you can see what's going on with the kids. You know, how is this impacting the children? Next slide, please. For the sake of time, we don't really need to go through this. This is just some examples of different community-based organizations. You know, it can be community centers. The PALS model with police departments, police activity leagues is another point, you know, depending on your community. This was up in Philadelphia. This hockey nonprofit was involved with PLAAY, and they're actually starting to roll out that model I just showed you up in Philadelphia. They got some grant funding, and they're using the DA as the triage, and then they're sending them to several different CBOs, one of them being this Philly hockey nonprofit. And Dr. Stevenson and the Racial Empowerment Collaborative is providing the training and the consultation and supervision for that program. It's just getting started though, so I don't think that there's probably any information out about it yet. Next slide. Do we have time for this? Should we move on?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, we don't have time.
Let's put this, we can put this in the Q&A documentation.
Yes, that sounds great.
Perfect. Sounds perfect. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.